Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting river daisies, and I'm sipping on some raspberry tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, fluorescent purple, chrome yellow, Mars black, and green oxide. And of course, you can switch up those colors as well if you'd like. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that I'll be using for some drawing, and then I have 3 brushes from my personal brush line, which is Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 1-inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 6 bright brush, which is a flat synthetic brush, and I have a number 5 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a few additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of the canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you could download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is paint a base coat for our background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush to paint, but I'm going to use my small brush to pre-mix a custom color. So I'm going to be using cobalt blue and black to create kind of a navy blue type of a color that I'll be using for my background. I'm going to use that color for the entire canvas, and then we'll build all of our details on top of it. So I have pre-mixed my colors so you can see where I'm headed. How I got to this, oh, it's going to slide right out of that compartment, so let's turn my easel or my palette. So what I did was I took cobalt blue and just added a touch of black into it. So what this does is it's just going to make it into a nice kind of navy blue type of a color that I'll be able to build lots of great detail on top of. So this is the color that I'm going for. Just be prepared when you're adding black into the paint. It will typically dry a little bit darker than it is when it's wet, so just mentally be prepared for that. And once I've got the color that I desire, I'm taking my large brush and I'm just going to paint the entire canvas. I also know that when using dark colors like this on my canvas, on the first layer, I will typically get a lot of streaking in throughout the paint for that particular layer because it's dark paint on top of a light background. So you're inevitably going to see some streaking within that paint and be able to see some of that background. At this stage of my painting, I'm okay with that because I know on my next step, I will be doing another coat to this background, which will eliminate all of this streakiness. So at this point, I'm just looking to give myself a base coat to work from or to work off of for the future steps. So I don't have to be terribly concerned about full coverage. I won't even do a second coat with this flat color because I know that the next step will take care of all the streakiness. And then I just do these nice long broad strokes back and forth to level out the paint, make sure I kind of hit every spot, even if it's a thin layer of paint where you'll see some streaking, as long as I get a full coverage. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are white, purple, and my dark blue. I do recommend before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating the illusion of an out of focus kind of sky background from the midpoint of my canvas up, and then I'm going to give the reflection of that in the water from halfway down to the bottom. So I'm going to be using the colors that I use at the top down at the bottom, but I'm going to be switching brush strokes. At the top I'll be using a circular brush stroke, and at the bottom I'll be using a left to right brush stroke. So I'm going to guide you through this. I'm going to start from my light color and work my way to the dark. I'm going to have lighter colors on the right hand side and then darker colors on the left hand side. I'm going to start with white paint on my brush, and I'm going to be doing my top half first. So I have white paint. I'm going to be applying this in a circular type of brush stroke. I don't need this to go all the way white. I'm really just kind of providing this lighter tone to the background so I can add some extra colors on top of it. This is about halfway up or down my canvas, so I'm going to just let myself kind of rub this out so it looks nice and soft, and it's almost transitioning over to this left-hand side in a soft and subtle kind of way. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start picking up a little bit of my purple color, and I'm going to start introducing and intermingling this on top of some of this lighter tone. Something like this. And this is kind of a progressive type of a step, so don't feel like you have to go all the way with one stroke. I'm going to keep kind of layering this until I get it into the color that I want it. Now I'm going to pick up some of my dark blue color. So this again is just kind of intermingling with these other tones that I put on here. And I'm not using a ton of paint. I am using enough where I can kind of spread it around and give it this little circular motion, but I'm not overloading my brush because I want these colors to kind of dry on the fly, so to speak, so that way I can continue to layer if I need to. And I'm using a light pressure on my brush, so this way I'm not lifting the paint off of the canvas as I'm kind of blending it throughout. I'm picking up more of my dark blue right now so I can transition over to this darker side over in through here. And then in a minute I'm going to start working on my bottom portion of the canvas while this top dries a little bit so we can build the layers on top of it and make it look nice and as out of focus as I'm looking to make it look. Actually, I think I'm going to wipe my brush off and I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my purple. I want to have a little bit more purple represented up in through here. And just know you can continue to add layers on top of this. You don't have to feel as if once you've got one layer on there, if it didn't come out exactly as you had planned, don't feel like that's it. Just let it dry and you can put another layer on top of it. So while this is kind of settling and drying a little bit, I'm going to work on the bottom portion of it. I'm going to add more purple and stuff over on this side, but I want it to dry a little bit first. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to start back with the same color combination. So washing and dry my brush, which means I'm going to start with white paint. So if you have a lot of lightness on this side up top, that's where you want to put the lightness down below. And I'm going to be using a left to right brush stroke as opposed to a circular brush stroke. So something like this, I had a lot of white up top in through there, so I'm going to put a lot down in this bottom portion of the canvas in through here. Let it kind of work its way over to this left hand side without overdoing it. And if you do feel like you have too much paint, just kind of wipe it off on your brush. You can even lift some of it off of the canvas if you feel like you've got too much. Now I'm going to start picking up my purple, which is the order that I did it up top. So I'm going to start introducing some purple into the equation. And again, yours might end up lighter or darker, or you might have more purple or more blue in yours. It doesn't have to be exactly as mine. You get to make it into whatever you want. Now I'm just wiping my brush off on my paper towel, picking up some of my dark blue, and I'm going to introduce the dark blue similarly to how I did up top. And again, only this time I'm using a left to right type of brush stroke. So it will emulate reflections in water as opposed to that atmospheric type of dimension that we put up top. And then what I'm going to do, just making sure this kind of carries a similar color as it does up here. And it doesn't have to carry the exact color. The top may be lighter or darker than the bottom, and conversely, the bottom might be lighter or darker than the top. The reflections can be skewed in color and in their direction. So again, don't feel it's got to be exactly one for one or a mirror image from the top to the bottom. I think I'm going to pull in a little bit more blue down here at the bottom just so I can have a little bit more darkness down here on the bottom as it's coming closer to the viewer. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to put some more of my purple on my brush over in through here to kind of emulate that. And then I'll put a little bit more, I think I might go up top before I finish this bottom. So we'll let this dry for a minute, picking up some more of my dark blue, again, just to get a similar kind of color pattern. And when I'm doing reflections, that's what I'm looking for, just a color pattern of something that's similar to whatever it's reflecting, a similar color in nature down in that reflective area. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to actually wash and dry my brush. I want to add a little bit more purple and blue over here on the left hand side. And again, I know it's going to dry a little bit darker, but I do want to bring a little bit more of that purple in. So I'm washing and drying my brush, and I'm going to pick up some more of my purple and my dark blue on my brush at the same time. I know that kind of layering these colors on top of each other as they dry, they will get a little bit deeper and richer in tone. So that's what I'm going for in through here. And then I'm thinking I've got the bottom pretty well because I left a good amount of purple over there on the left-hand side. And then what I would do is I would let it dry and see if there's any additional, like maybe I want a little bit more purple. I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I think I want a little more pop of a purple aspect up at the top. And then I would just kind of keep tweaking it, just wash and dry my brush. I would keep tweaking it as it dries. Or I would let it dry and say, maybe I want a little more pop of the purple up in through here. Or maybe I want a little bit more of the lightness. But for me, I know that my flowers are going to be the star of the show. So I don't want these background colors to be too bright in nature or too overpowering. I kind of want them to be a little bit softer and more subtle, so that way they just are background noise and they kind of complement the painting. I just picked up a little bit more white and my dark blue to get a little bit more lightness down in through here. It dried a little bit darker than I wanted it to, and then just getting it to blend out a little bit. And again, you can have yours in whatever color value you want. I just recommend this left-hand side is pretty dark and the right-hand side is a little bit lighter. And then once you've got this done, we're going to be using our piece of chalk for the next step. So you can put this large brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our daisies. I'm going to be using my chalk. You could certainly use any drawing utensil that's comfortable to you. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be drawing or guiding you through a series of markers and some basic shapes, and by the time we're done we'll have some very simplistic outlines for our flowers that we'll be able to utilize during the coloring in process of painting. I do recommend again that you make sure that your canvas is dry for this step because it's easier to draw on a dry canvas than it is on a wet canvas. So I'm going to have two flowers. You could certainly have as many as you'd like. I'm just going to have two very large focal point kind of flowers so we can have some nice reflections. The first one that I'm going to have is going to be really close to the water. So it's actually, the head of it is going to be kind of below my halfway point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find myself the center of my canvas left to right. So for me, that's somewhere in this vicinity. And this is right on my horizon kind of line, which is about, for me, center of my canvas. And I'm going to come below that just a little bit. I'm going to give myself an oval type of a shape that kind of tips down a little bit this way. So mine's about 1.5 inches wide by about 1 inch tall. So you could certainly make yours in whatever size that you'd like, but that's where I'm going to start mine. I'm going to do the center of the other flower next, so that way we have a good idea as to where we're going to have them placed and they don't encroach in each other's space as we're doing the petals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come, you could either go from the center or from the top, wherever you want. You're going to be about halfway from left to right. And then I'm going to come down about 1/4 of the way down my canvas. So about halfway between here and the top of my canvas. And I'm going to come over to the left about 1 inch, 1.5 inches. And I'm going to do another oval type of a shape. This one's going to be maybe a little bit more tipped, I guess, and maybe it might be a little bit longer, but again, they don't have to be perfectly the same size, whatever works for you. This flower is going to be kind of more tipped like this, and then this one's going to be, if this is it flat, it's going to be kind of tipped almost kind of like towards and down the other side of the canvas. So I'm going to position my petals accordingly. This is just a very generic style daisy. Daisies come in a wide variety of colors and number of petals and things of that nature. So I'm just going to provide mine with kind of singular petals all the way around. I'm going to start in through here, and my tallest one is going to be, I would say, maybe about 2.5 to 3 inches above the horizon line, and then it's maybe about 1.5 inches to 2 inches below here. So because I've got this one is going to be kind of tipped a little bit differently, my petals won't kind of come down past or too much past this point. I might have 1 or 2 a little bit farther than this, but this will give you a good stopping point for the height of these ones on this bottom one. And then what I'm going to do is all my petals are going to come out from this center area in through here. They're going to be longer over on this top left-hand side, and then I'll have them kind of shorter and wider on the bottom right. So I'm just going to kind of start like this and give myself a whole bunch of little petals coming out this way. I'm going to start to curve them a little bit, giving them a little bit of a bend of sorts coming along this side. I'm going to do my other longer ones over in through here. So something like this. Whenever I'm doing flowers, I'm always thinking of what's happening with that petal. Is it leaning over? Is it curling towards the viewer? And on this particular type of flower that I'm doing, the majority of them are kind of like leaning out. So that's what I'm trying to, in my head, as I'm drawing the shapes of these petals. I think I want a smaller one behind there. As I'm drawing the shapes of these petals, that's what I'm envisioning in my head, is them just kind of coming out and maybe kind of curling over just a little bit. So I've got another one down in through here. And then, so this is, I'm gonna do a couple more here so you can see how far down I'm going with the length of them. I think I want another little one behind here. So this is about another 1/4 of the way down my canvas. That's about how far down I've got that one. I'm going to have a couple in through here that are going to explain to the viewer that the flower's tipped a little bit, so they're going to be a little bit shorter. So this one I'm going to have come in like this, and then I'm going to have just a shorter one in through here. So as if we're seeing this one from the side. So that's all the petals I'm going to do on that flower. The next one up here, I'm going to tackle my long petals first, which are going to be all along this side in through here, and then I'll do a couple of short ones over here. So you can really start wherever you'd like to. I'm going to start just in through here. I'm going almost all the way up to the top of my canvas. You do not have to have exactly the same number of petals as I do. They don't have to be positioned exactly as mine are. This is going to be your flower. You can make it whatever way you want it to be. I'm going to leave my short ones for last so we don't get confused as to what we're doing here. And these are kind of, these ones in through here might be a little bit shorter than these ones in through here, because these ones, again, we're seeing the flower at a unique kind of angle. It's not dead on. It's a little bit to the side, so I'm coming out like this. I'm going to do another one in through here. I'm going to do another long one and in through here. This one over here, I think I'm going to have kind of like the petals coming out towards us. So I'm going to kind of curve this one here as if it's almost curving up a little bit. And then I have two right here that are really straight kind of at the viewer. So they're going to look really short right now, especially as I am drawing them in. So that one's going to be like that. And then this one I'm going to have like this. And then that's all I'm going to be doing for my outline. You could certainly do any little adjustments that you want. We're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your chalk away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat for our flowers. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, purple, and yellow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing a base coat of black for the centers, and I'm going to be using my yellow and purple to pre-mix a magenta type of a color, which will be the base coat for all of my petals. So I have magically pre-mixed my color, and I will show you how I got there. So this is the color I'm going for. How I got to that is mostly purple and just a teeny tiny touch of yellow. So the yellow is going to be super powerful, and it's going to turn this vibrant purple into a magenta really quickly. So just add a teeny tiny touch at a time and then just spin it around. So what this is doing is it is taking the vibrancy out of that fluorescent purple and just turning it into a more muted kind of primary magenta type of a color. So I'm going to use this as the base for my petals, which is going to help to provide me with a lot of room to make dimension on them. So once I've got my color, I'm going to paint in these petals, knowing that this color is transparent and it's going to take on the color underneath it, so it will turn darker as it dries. So I've planned for this the whole time, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this color, I'm going to bring it right to the edge of my chalk mark. You can do a thin layer or a thick layer. It's all going to work out. What I'm doing is I'm just doing kind of nice directional type of brush strokes in the direction that I feel the veins of the petals would be going. So for me, as I'm doing this, I'm just kind of taking my time to get myself a nice layer on here. Some of these petals are going to be laying in front or behind each other, but right now I'm just looking to give a base coat on here. And when I'm doing something that I know is going to have evidential kind of stripes or color variations within that one section, I tend to make sure that I'm using a directional brush stroke, because I know that the paint will tend to be a little streaky, and if I use a directional brush stroke, the streakiness is okay for me because it adds to my details as I'm going through the process. So I use it to my advantage by the streakiness or the transparency by using these directional brush strokes. So again, it's just kind of a shortcut method for me as I'm doing, as I'm building my paintings, knowing what that paint does, like is this particular color going to be a little bit see-through? Do I need to have, am I going to eventually have kind of striped streakiness in these petals? And if that's the case, just understanding what that paint does and being able to work with it to your advantage makes your painting process a little bit easier. So you can see I just was kind of pulling the paint in that direction. and it's going to help me build that petal as I go through the painting process. And I'm going to do the same thing down in through here. You could certainly do 2 layers of this same color on these petals if you wanted to, but I know that we're going to be doing a lot of building on these petals to make them have some very pretty dimension to them and some vibrant colors. So I wouldn't worry terribly about getting a full coverage on here where you can't see through it. I'm again using the transparency of it to my advantage, but if you wanted to you know, build it in a different way, feel free to do so. Even around like a corner like this where I feel I might have this petal kind of leaning over a little bit, I'm going to use that brush stroke in that direction to help start telling that story. And you know, you're not going to get it perfect, like especially on the edges where I know that I can't, you know, always use the exact directional brush stroke that I want, but if I can aid in my visual preference along the way, or aid in the information that I'm giving to the viewer with my directional brush stroke, then that's what I'm going to do. And then once I've got my petals done, I'll wash and dry my brush so I can get a base coat on the center of the flower. And of course you can see I still have little bits of chalk mark here and there. I'm okay with that. You can even have little spaces between your petals. We'll take care of all that stuff as we go through the painting process. Sometimes leaving a little bit helps so you don't make the thing too big. I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put black paint on my brush. I'm going to be using black as the center, the base color for the center. I'm going to be dotting this using a stippling type of technique. I'm going to go a little bit above or outside the top edge of my oval, because I'm going to be having these little center texture that I'm adding later on. But right now I'm just kind of coming all the way to the bottom and the sides, and then up at the top I'm just popping it out just a little bit so we can almost see through it a bit. Again, we're going to be doing more information on the petals too, but this is going to just start that real textural piece that I want to have evident at the top, and then at the bottom I can just bring it right to my chalk, and again just kind of dotting this in through here. And then I'm going to be using my I'm going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat for, I'm going to call it our land. So we're going to have a little piece of land kind of coming on this left-hand side where our flowers are growing out of. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, green, and yellow. I'm going to do the base coat of the land, and I'm also going to do the base coat of the land's reflection down in through here. So I'm going to start with a little bit of black paint, and what I'm going to do is just kind of give myself where I want the land to meet the water. So I've got black paint on my brush, and I'm just going to go left to right. I'm going to bring it right in between these two petals in through here, and then I'm also going to cross it over and come out right about in through here on this petal. And I'm just using a little bit of black on my brush right now to give myself this nice kind of deep transition from where the land is kind of meeting the water, and it's going to give me some nice contrast with the flowers popping as well. So now that I got that on there, I'm going to start picking up green on my dirty brush. So I have black and green on my brush right now. I'm really just going to give myself an area where I want these leaves and maybe some wild grass to pop up and be evident. So I'm going to just kind of scoot a little bit of this between my petals. I know that later I'm going to be adding a bunch of brightness to this. So as I'm going through this process right now, I'm just considering this to be the base coat. So I'm not terribly concerned if it's really visible or if I bump into my petals or anything like that, or if it has a lot of detail in it, I'm just looking to give myself kind of the footprint where I want. As I'm working my way towards the top, I keep picking up green paint. I know, and I know that I need a stem on here in a minute as well, but right now just kind of giving myself these little kind of popping out pointy pieces, for lack of a better terminology. Maybe I'll get something kind of coming up in through here. And again, I'll put some brighter stuff on in a minute, or the stem and stuff. I'm going to put a couple of little pieces of grass coming up in through here. I'm picking up a little bit more black paint on my brush just to give myself the illusion of some little pieces of grass. You can really have whatever kind of greenery or foliage stuff that you want back here. I just want mine to look nice and wild and that Mother Nature is really taking over. I'm picking up a tiny bit more black paint. I'm going to put my stem on. So I'm going to have it's got to be coming from the center of my flower. I'm going to have it kind of trailing down like this and over here. So I just have black paint. I'm going to just imagine it coming in through here, coming underneath this little petal here. And again, don't worry about bumping into your petals at this point, because you're going to be able to correct that or modify it later. I'm just going to bring this down and maybe over towards this left hand side. And I'm using black so I can see it later, and I can identify it with highlights and shadows and stuff later. I'm gonna pick up more green right now and just put a little bit of extra brightness or some little popping out details over in through here, just very impressionistic, nothing perfect. And then I'm gonna do a similar exercise for the let me add a little bit of yellow first. I'm wiping off my brush. I'm picking up a tiny bit of yellow. I just want to pop in just a little bit of yellow right now just to start the brightness party. So just a little bit on the tips of those. I didn't wash my brush, so it actually looks really green, putting it on top of that other stuff. Now I'm going to just wipe my brush off. I'm going to pick up a touch more black paint and start this reflection. I have this stem here. I'm also going to have a reflection of the stem from here, but you can't really see it behind here. It'll be evident in the water in a minute because of the angle that I've got this at, but I have black paint on my brush. I'm going to be using a left to right type of brush stroke so I can still see some of that watercolor underneath it. I'm going right up to my petal and even bumping into it, so that way I make sure that I have it fully executed and it looks like the reflection is behind it or below it. I'm going to have some of this black coming down this left-hand side to emulate the reflection of this darker foliage over here on the left-hand side. Then what I'm going to do, I need the reflection of this stem. We're going to have lots more information on this reflection later. I really just want to get it started right now with this greenery, so that way I have an easier time later building the additional colors. I'm going to have another stem for this one kind of coming out, and this is going to meet these guys in through here. So I'm going to put this, I'm going to say somewhere about here. So again, just black paint going left to right, giving myself the start of these little reflections. Now I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm going to pick up a little bit of green paint and intermingle that green with the black. Again, base coat, not really worried, putting a little green over here. Just getting it started so we have a good time later and it looks nice and as realistic as we want it to look, or impressionistic, gives the impression of what we're seeing up top down below in this reflection. So you can be as loose of a painter as you want, or as tight and you know, full-on photorealistic, but I'm considering this to be a nice loose interpretive type of painting. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Maybe just a little bit more yellow on here I just picked up a little bit of yellow to give a little bit of that brightness at the top of some of those pieces. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this part done, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm going to be finishing this little land piece, the stems and their reflection. I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors I'm going to use are green, yellow, and white, and I might use a little bit of black too if I feel the need to. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm just going to be doing another layer to add a little bit more detail to it in order to give a bit more life and dimension to it. So I already know, where my land meets my water. So I just want to make sure that I kind of keep the more real detail up top, and then just that left to right brush stroke down below, and the reflection is just going to carry a color pattern of whatever is up top. So I'm going to work on my top first, and then I'll go ahead and do the reflection. So I know that I want a little bit of highlight on my stem here, and I'm also going to put the illusion of kind of a little tiny bit of a stem over here, which I'm just going to, whatever I use for a highlight here, I'll use on that stem as well. And then I'm going to identify a couple of tips of some leaves with just little bright spots on them, and then carry those colors down below. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of green, yellow, and white, all three colors on my brush at the same time, so just a little bit of each, and I'm going to just pick a couple of these leaves in order to kind of give them little bright pops towards maybe the top of them. Maybe I've got a little leaf kind of coming over in this direction. You don't need to do a whole heck of a lot. You've got a nice base with those darker colors, so any little bit of a highlight is going to tell a big story. So you can, I'm just kind of picking little light spots that are already there, and then adding a little punch of brightness to them. I want to give this stem a little bit of lightness, so I'm going to put that over on the right hand side. So I'm just kind of rolling down that stem. I'm also going to put a little illusion of a stem coming behind here. So if I imagine it to kind of be traveling back behind here, maybe it pops out somewhere in this vicinity, and just give it a little bit of a line in through there. I've got that color combination still on my brush, so I'm going to put little extra bits up in through here on some of these pieces. I'm thinking that that's pretty good. I don't really need to do all that heck of a lot. I tell you, when you're doing something like this, kind of less is more. If you get into it and you're feeling like what you just did is visually appealing to you, then don't do anymore. You don't need to overpaint it. Sometimes we tend to overpaint because we think that wasn't enough. We didn't work hard enough to create that illusion. But trust me when I say you do work hard enough. I'm picking up a tiny bit of black on my dirty brush. I feel like I want just a couple more pieces of grass up in through here, kind of a silhouetted type of look, and I don't really want to see much of my blue behind this land area, so I'm just kind of dotting in little bits and pieces of darkness to make sure that I can't see any more of my blue. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. Let me just take care of that little line in through there. There we go, that works. I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and because I just had black on it, I want to pick up just a little bit more green on my brush, because I feel I have got a couple more little spots in through here that could use a little more finessing, so I just picked up a little bit more green to make sure that I've got that the way that I want, and now I'm just going to travel down below. So I'm going to pick up that same color combination of green, yellow, and white, all on my brush at the same time, all three colors, and I'm going to follow this color pattern that I did at the top. So I've got this stem in through here, which is this guy right in through here, and I'm just using my left to right brush stroke to accomplish that. I'm going to do this one in through here, which is this guy right in through here. So again, just kind of left to right, overlapping these colors a little bit, so it looks like maybe my water is moving pretty well. I've got this brightness that would be, in my opinion, somewhere in this direction. I'm going to put a little bit more white paint on my brush to maybe account for that little bright spot, and it's a reflection, so these colors can intermingle with one another. They, if the water's moving, then that color gets skewed and rolls over another area. And then I've got some brightness over on this side over in through here. So again, this is just the yellow, green, and white, something like that, allowing that reflection to go over that. And I'm thinking that that's all I'm going to do. I don't feel like I need or want to do too much more. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of let it dry, and if I want to fiddle with it anymore, I certainly will. But I'm going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this part done, you can wash and dry your meeting brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm going to paint the second layer on my petals. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are magenta, white, and purple. You could, of course, like I was saying earlier, that these daisies have so many different varieties of colors. So if you want to go, you know, blue, go blue. If you want to go pink, go pink. Go whatever color you want. But I'm going to be using the magenta. Is going to kind of look like a maroony type of a color when it's all said and done, and along with that vibrant purple and white. So it's going to have a great color diversity. I'm going to start with just white paint on my brush so I can get some real light edges to my petals, and then I'll work my way into the darkness. So I just have white paint on my brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start kind of at the tip of a petal, and then just bring this down in a kind of a streaky type of a way down towards here, but I'm not bringing it all the way white all the way to that center. So what this is going to do, and you can even leave some of the color at the tips of the petals if you want to. I will inevitably will have little streaks of those colors at the edges anyways. Totally up to you. As I'm coming through these though, I am kind of mindful as to if I've got one that's sitting in front of another one. So like I feel this one's going to be sitting maybe in front of this one. So if that's the case, I'll let that happen. I'll put my light color in through here and just kind of pull it back. And this is where I was talking about the streakiness. But let me finish this thought first. So if this one is going to be sitting in front, I'm going to put it on that edge, and then I can pull the edge of it in front of that one. So you can play with that all you want. You might have some that are really in front of others. This one I also feel these ones might kind of cup under. So I'm going to give, as I'm painting this, I'm thinking, oh, it's going to cup like this. So that's the direction I pull my brush stroke in. I'm going to, same thing with this guy in through here. I'm putting my white on that edge, and then I'm kind of just pulling it as it's still wet, pulling it towards the interior part of the flower, but in kind of a curved type of manner. So something like that. And I'm going to do that I'm going to save these guys for last. I like to sometimes save those difficult ones for last, after we're all warmed up, when we're doing a systematic kind of approach like this. Get the easy ones done first so you're used to it, and then when you go to do the more difficult ones, you can save those ones for last. So again, just kind of approaching this at the edges and then just kind of pulling it back. And I guess my pressure kind of varies and the direction of my brush, the way that I use my brush. So I'm kind of using it flatter at the top, and then as I'm coming down, I'm using the narrow side. So I think that's why I chose to use this brush, because I knew that I'd want to have kind of a flatter type of edge. And then I'm skipping this one because I'm having it behind. I wanted to show you this. So this one's going to go in front. I could have done the other one first, but I knew I wanted this one in front. So this was going to be easier for me to do it this way. So you can, approach it whatever is your easiest way to do it. This one's going to be kind of in back of these two. So I'm just going to kind of pull it right there, and then just pull some of those in through there. Maybe that wasn't the easiest way. Maybe I should have done that one first, but it's okay either way. So these guys right in through here, they're going to be kind of leaning out, or kind of towards that viewer. If I've got this one kind of propped up, maybe this one in through here, I've got that. And again, in my head, I just try and envision what this petal's doing. I feel like maybe it's kind of dipping like this and then, you know, going towards that center. So it just helps when I can, in my head, imagine what that object is doing, because that will kind of steer my brush stroke. It's just one of those things that for me, if I can see it in my head, which I can't always, but if I can get to a place where I can see it in my head, that those thoughts just will kind of help me pull that brush stroke in the right direction. So I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to start just at the tip in through here, and I'm not using a lot of paint on my brush. I feel like I'm overloaded for this particular one, so just feeling the amount of paint that you'll need, so you'll have a good amount on the tip, and then you'll have enough to just kind of pull it down but not overpaint the petal itself, the interior of the petal. When you get to this little piece that's overlapping the land, make sure you overlap the land so you don't have a part of the unpainted background. You just want to make sure on all of the, well, I guess on all of these, where you're next to a piece that we worked behind it, like all of this land, you just want to make sure that you bring these petals in front of those background land pieces. So when I get over on this left-hand side of this flower, I will definitely be mindful of that aspect. And again, if you still have little pieces of chalk showing after this step, or if you have spaces between these petals where you can see the background, that's all right. These petals can totally be spaced apart. They don't have to be touching or overlapping each other. If they are, great, but if not, that's no big deal. And then I'm just kind of finishing up these ones, and then we're going to add some color to them. So again, bright on the ends, and then just pulling this color in towards the center of the flower. And you can even, I was seeing that some of these flowers also had almost like a white outline to the petals. So again, there's such a huge variety of these daisies. It's just a real a flower that just has so much diversity with the colors, with the number of petals. But I think the main characteristic is it's got that center where these kind of long oval type of shape petals come right out of that interior center, which most flowers do, but this one is in a very, you know, traditional circular type of shape that the petals are very easy to create. So it's a fun flower, especially if you're just learning how to paint flowers. So now that I've got that, now I want to introduce some of my colors to it. So I'm going to be using my magenta and my lavender. I'm going to or my purple, my fluorescent purple. I'm going to start with my magenta, and I'm going to now pull this from the inside of the flower out. So this is kind of reverse what I did with the white, and this is just giving me kind of a second layer inside the interior of these petals. And again, you can have yours as bright or as dark as you want. I'm just kind of taking it from the center in through here and then just pulling it up and into that that petal itself. And if you wanted to, you could certainly pick up some white and blend it out, but I'm thinking, for me, just kind of pulling it and allowing it to merge into it is working just fine for me. Again, this is my magenta starting out the color process, going from that center and just pulling it out. I do not have any white in my magenta right now, so if you bump into the center of your flower, that's okay, and you're also going to be able to see through this. So that's where you're seeing these lighter areas as it's crossing over where I put that white. And I'm going to do the same thing with purple in a second here. So that was my white. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush And I'm picking up my purple, and I'm going to use my purple as a third color in through here. So this is, again, just wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to use my purple on top of here. So this, again, is going to be a personal preference on your part. Once I've got this purple introduced into here, I can put a final layer of white on those tips. You can even, as you're doing this purple I'm kind of going into the mid range of the petal, but again, you could do this color variation whatever way you want. I just keep loading my brush with the purple, and you can see how it's adding another tone to these petals. And then once I've got the purple on, I will just add a little bit of additional white on the edge of the petal, and then I'll call it. And if you want to do more layers to it, you certainly could. I'm going to wash and dry my brush and just come back with one final pass of the white on the edges of the petal. So again, just wiping my brush off, and I'm not going to use a lot of paint. I'm just really going to use this again to accentuate any of these lighter areas that I want. I can cross it over. You can, make it as vibrant as you want or as subtle as you want. I just continue to kind of overlap these colors in order to get them to really talk to one another. You can make it, these could be, super pristine white petals. I'm just digging how they're kind of talking to that mid color, and if you wanted more purple, add more purple or more magenta. That's going to be up to you. And then once I've got this, I'm going to do this for both flowers with the white, just kind of accentuating the tips of these. And if your petals are too wet as you're doing this final pass on them, just let them dry for a few minutes. You don't have to go as fast as I'm going. You don't have to make yours exactly the same color as mine are. You can certainly wait for them to dry a little bit before you add this last final color onto them. It's, again, whatever process works for you. And then I'm just going to bring this into here. And, maybe a different brush works better for you. You could use a filbert brush. Those have a nice kind of flat, rounded end that works pretty well for this type of process as well. But again, that's going to be up to you. Got one final pass down here on these little guys in through here. And then I will definitely let mine dry, because I may want to come back with one more pass on the color to get it as bright as I want. But I'm going to definitely, this second layer of white on top is bringing it. I'm feeling probably as close as or as bright as I want, but I will most likely let mine dry for a couple minutes. And if I want to amp up any of these little petals, I will certainly do that, and it'll be with the same process of just kind of adding the white at the tips, and then a combination of the purple and or the magenta on the interior of those petals. And then once you've got this done, we'll be using we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So again, you can fiddle with this as much as you want. You can make these lighter or darker or more purple or more magenta, more pink, whatever you'd like to do. And then once you've got this done, you can put this brush, boy, I love painting petals. You can put this brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the centers of the flowers. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are white, yellow, and cobalt blue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding a bunch of texture, maybe some black too. I'm going to add a bunch of texture in these centers to show the vibrant colors, and I think they're called stamen, the little things or seeds or something in the middle of the flowers. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to start with some white paint on my brush, and I'm making a ton of little polka dots. I'm concentrating the brightness up towards the top portion of this section, so that way it tells the viewer that the sun is kind of up in that direction, and it's going to provide some nice contrast. So I'm just kind of making a whole bunch of little polka dots, and you want to go past the footprint of here. So it looks like they are taller, and like it's got some height to these little pieces. So it's not just flat in the center of that flower. So just a whole bunch of little white polka dots coming in through here. I'm not doing anything other than making white polka dots right now. And then I'm not going to bring it all the way down to the bottom, so something like that. I'm going to do the same thing down in the bottom one, down in through here. So again, just a bunch of white polka dots past the footprint of that center area, so you can kind of see through some of them onto the petals behind them. And again, I'm not bringing it all the way down to the base of it, so something like that will work. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to make sure that down towards the base of the petals, it transitions well into the petals. So I am going to pick up a tiny bit of black paint, and I'm just going to make sure that I've got this just pulled into these little crevices, so it either if I need a shadow in between any of those petals, or if I need just some closure so the petal doesn't look like it's kind of floating in through there. You could, if you needed to, you could use a little bit of your petal color as well. I just want to make sure that I've got nice closure in through there. I'm going to do the same thing down on this side. So this is just black. I do also have a little bit of water on my brush, so I can just kind of let it sink into these little crevices, maybe in between some of those petals. And again, this is just so for my own painterly eye, I've got this area fully finished in through there. That was a little aggressive, but that's okay. Maybe pull this down just a little bit in through here. Yeah, there we go. Make sure that looks good to me. And now what I'm going to do, I'm washing and drying my brush. I'm going to put a little bit of cobalt blue on my brush. So a little bit of cobalt blue. I'm going to be adding additional dots in through here. I don't need to go on top of all of the white dots or avoid the white dots. Just intermingle it, and I'm going to put some of them down below. So the blue is going to dry darker than that white. So this is going to allow it to look like there's some of that seed stuff down at the bottom of here, but it's not going to be as bright as the top. So that's going to provide you with that illusion of it being lighter at the top. I'm going to do the same thing down here. So I'm putting some blue polka dots within the white area, and I'm also going to bring some down into the black area down below. I think I need a couple more up in that top area, but just bringing some down in through here, and then maybe just a couple up in through here as well. I think actually I'm going to pick up a little bit of blue, cobalt blue and white at the same time. I feel like I want a couple more up here, but a little bit lighter. So I'm just putting a little bit of white on my brush as well, so I can have kind of like light blue ones up in through here. Yeah, that feeds my eye. There we go. So cobalt blue and a little bit of white are on my brush right now. Just get a couple of little light blue ones up towards the top. I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put chrome yellow and white on my brush at the same time. Mostly chrome yellow, but with a little bit of white. And I'm going to do a whole bunch of bright yellow polka dots. So you can, if this was one of those things where you felt, you really wanted that blue to dry before you started tackling the yellow, you could certainly do that. But I'm just dotting it really heavily with thick paint, and I'm not dotting it too many times, just kind of adding some really thick paint. Like I've got a ton of paint on my brush right now, and I'm just adding these real bright little spots. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other one. So again, this is just yellow and white and a lot of paint. So that way you can really see just a few of these bright yellow spots. And again, I'm not over painting it so I don't get rid of all the blue spots, and I'm just adding some nice bright yellow ones. And then we're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to be doing for the next step is I'm going to finish my reflection. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to be using are black, white, blue, yellow, purple, and magenta. And if I need to use any other colors, I will let you know. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing, and I say it all the time as a color pattern. I'm going to be doing a color pattern of what's up top in the water. I wanted to give the illusion that these flowers are being reflected in the water. I'm going to have my waters kind of ripply, which we already started in this stuff over here. I want to have a couple of the tips of these petals kind of dipped in the water a little bit, so we'll be submerging them in the water, and then we're going to be creating a pattern of what we see up top down below. So for me, the easiest way to do this is kind of start with my obvious objects and put them in relationship to one another, or the most high contrast type of objects. So for me, that's the centers of the flowers. I've already kind of established the stems, one here and one here, here and here. So now what I'm going to do is kind of establish where I want those centers to go, because I'd like them both to be visible in the water. This one could potentially be off the composition, but I want them in the water. I want them visible to the viewer. So I'm going to start with a little bit of black paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go directly below this guy in through here. And I'm going to come maybe about a third of the way, maybe almost halfway between here and the bottom of my canvas, somewhere in through here. I'm going to, with my black paint, I'm going to give myself just a real kind of loose, oval type of shape with these squiggly lines. And this is going to give me the makings of where I want this one. And then I know this one has to be over to the left, so I can just kind of come directly below this one, down in through here, and I'm going to go just a little bit maybe more to the left. So I'm going to put this down at the bottom of the canvas so I can have it on here and still take on some, to show those colors, but I don't need to do anything, I don't need it to be too much closer than this. I do have, let's see, the stem is in through there. That's fine. I'm just making sure I've got enough of a area in through here. That's looking pretty good. While I have the black on my brush, I'm going to establish where those petals are kind of submerged. So I'm going to kind of clip off the bottom of this one in through here. So just kind of bringing this around like this, just kind of going straight across like that, getting that little guy to submerge. I'm going to kind of come over to this one and do a similar process. Just want to clip that off and let it sink it right into the water. You could certainly do this with any of them if you wanted to, but I'm just going to do it with those two. And then I'm going to just give this a dark ripply type of illusion down here. So it looks like maybe we're seeing, the dark reflections within those ripples. And then I'm going to just kind of bring a little bit more of this darkness here. If you felt that you wanted more darkness anywhere else while you've got this on your brush, like if you wanted this petal to pop out more, you could certainly put a little bit more darkness in those back reflections, just little things to make certain aspects pop out a little bit more. But I'm thinking that that's pretty good. Maybe a little bit more darkness over here on this left-hand side before I start adding my lighter colors on. I'm thinking that's pretty good. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush now, and I'm going to start building my reflection in a similar way to how I built my petals. So I'm going to start, or my flowers. So I'm going to start with that magenta type of a color. I know I have a lot of magenta in the middle of the flower in through there, so that's where this magenta is going to go. I'm taking it and I'm kind of going around that center. I am definitely going to overlap it a little bit, so that way overlap it into that center a little bit, so that way it carries that color throughout the ripples in the water. I can certainly, it is the undertone of all of these petals, so you could get away with using this magenta as the base for almost your entire reflection. I'm going to bring some of this in through here, so definitely around that center of the flower reflection, but again, because it is the base of all of your petals, you could get away with using it in a wider breadth of an area. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now, is just kind of pulling it a little bit more in that water, as we might be seeing the underside, the reflection of the underside of some of the flowers. Reflections are great because they can skew what you're seeing up top. They can be longer, they can be lighter, they can be darker, they can have information from the water below, so you can really have fun with that. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to pick up some white paint, and I'm going to put a lot of my white reflections in. So I just picked up some white paint. I know that my white is going to come in a lot of areas because I have white surrounding all of my petals, or introduced in all of my petals. So again, I'm just going left to right with this kind of wiggly type of brush stroke. I want it to look like it's intermingled with the water itself, so I'm not shy with bringing these colors out and letting them merge with the exterior watercolor. That's what's going to make it look, to me, more natural. So I'm just allowing myself to kind of bring this color out. And definitely bring these lighter notes kind of directly below the petals themselves, something like that. I don't want it too light as it's getting towards the center of the flower, because I know I want to have those other colors be very evident, but I definitely want a lot down here because I'm reflecting that top flower as well. So lots of white right now, just kind of immersing my reflection, or giving a bunch into my reflection in through here. And again, just these kind of long, wiggly type of brush strokes, allowing for it to look like it is moving water and that it is taking on the colors of that flower. Again, doesn't have to be exactly one for one kind of color. It could be brighter or darker, but just providing that illusion in through there. And I'm going to pick up some of my fluorescent purple. I didn't wash my brush. I just picked up the fluorescent purple because I know that I'm going to want it a little bit brighter in some areas. So that white on my brush is going to help me to create that, and just kind of sprinkling it in here and there to give the illusion that it is, again, reflecting what I want it to reflect. This is going to be, again, closer to the center of the flower, so putting a little bit in through there. It's looking good to me. You can, again, make it look whatever way you want. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to wash and dry my brush so I can get some of, maybe just pull this out just a little bit further out on this side. This is looking pretty good. I'm not washing my brush. I'm just kind of having fun with the colors that are on my brush right now, allowing for some nice hues to be strewed about the rest of the water, making it feel like we've got a lot of shiny color and movement throughout this water, maybe a little bit over in through here. That's looking pretty. All right. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put these little centers on. So I got to be kind of careful with this not to overpaint these little guys, especially since I know I'm going to be using kind of a rubbing type of a technique. So I'm just going to, look at the color pattern first. If I was to reverse this, I have dark at the bottom, then I kind of have more blue and white, and then I have my yellow. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to have it dark at the bottom, I'll have more blue in through here, and then more yellow up in through here. But again, I want to kind of start with that white base. So I'm going to put a tiny bit of white paint on my brush. I'm going to go towards the top of my black section, put little speckles of white up and through there. I'm going to do the same thing on this guy. Oh, I don't have much of this guy, but I definitely want there to be something. So I'm going to just go for it. Put a little bit of white in that area, in through there. Then I'm going to just wipe my brush off, pick up a little bit of my cobalt blue so I can make sure that I can see the cobalt blue in through here. I didn't wash my brush, so I have little evidence of the white too, so it's making that kind of nice, vibrant, like light blue type of a color that I can see on top of the water. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put yellow and white on my brush, and quite a bit of it. Quite a bit of both the yellow and the white. I've got my brush pretty well loaded because I know I just want to kind of tap it on here so the viewer can really see it. It has good opacity, and I've got that color pattern worked out pretty well. Yeah, that works good. And don't lose my thought down here. Just put some of this, just kind of tapping it left to right. If you want a little bit more yellow so they can see it, just add a little bit more yellow. And then again, let it dry. See if there's any little marks that you want to enhance. Like I'm picking up a little more blue and white right now because this didn't pop as much as I wanted it to. So I picked up a little bit more blue and white to make sure that we could see that. And then fiddle with it as much as you want. I'm picking up more white now. And then when you're done, we're going to use we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. I'm using my small brush. I'm going to go bottom left on this one. I'm signing it with black paint. You could certainly sign yours with any color or in any way that you want. I like to use my initials. You can use symbols, you can use your full name, you can put the date on it, whatever you want for your identifying mark to be is up to you because it's your painting. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a couple of beautiful flowers, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.